In a village, a blonde priestess is registering at an adventurer's guild. She starts with the lowest rank porcelain. The highest ranked adventurers in town are ranked silver, but there are also gold and platinum ranks, which very few adventurers have reached. Noticing the priestess, a party of 3 newbie adventurers immediately invite her to go slay some goblins with them. The priestess agrees to join them, and they soon find themselves in front of a goblin cave. While the priestess is worried, the other 3 adventurers are careless and think goblins are weak. The warrior boy and the fighter go ahead, while the priestess and the witch stay behind. Suddenly, a group of goblins starts attacking the 2 girls, and the witch gets stabbed. Hearing screaming behind them, the warrior and the fighter rejoin them. The warrior fights the goblins carelessly and gets stabbed in the leg. Knocking the sword out of his hands, the goblins tear him apart. Meanwhile, the priestess realizes she cannot help and heal the witch because she has been poisoned. The female fighter is the only one left who can fight the goblins, but a huge hobgoblin appears and swings her around, before the other goblins crowd around her and savagely beat her. Running away with tears in her eyes, the priestess gets hit with an arrow. Before the goblins can kill her, a mysterious man in full body armor quietly appears behind them. Killing the goblins mercilessly, he saves the priestess and takes her outside. He introduces himself as the Goblin Slayer, a silver rank adventurer, and gives her a healing potion. The priestess joins the Goblin Slayer, and the 2 of them enter the cave again. The Goblin Slayer tells the priestess that goblins are both smarter and more dangerous than people think, and that these ones are led by a shaman. Venturing deeper, the priestess blinds the goblins with a spell, after which the Goblin Slayer first kills the shaman, then all the other goblins. Finding some goblin children, he kills them too, saying they would hold a grudge against him when they grow up. Before leaving the cave, they rescue the village girls the goblins have kidnapped. Sometime later, the priestess meets the Goblin Slayer in the guild again and forms a party with him. In the past, a boy argues with a red-haired girl, but the boy's older sister makes them stop. The 2 friends split up when the girl goes on a trip to the city. The next morning, a red-haired girl wakes up in a farm. She greets the Goblin Slayer by checking for signs of goblins around the farm. The Goblin Slayer lives with the farmer girl and her uncle. After their breakfast, the Goblin Slayer and the girl go to the city together. At the Adventurers Guild, a blonde receptionist has been getting lots of goblin extermination requests, but nobody wants to accept them except the Goblin Slayer. When the Goblin Slayer arrives, everyone at the guild avoids him. They all think he is a weirdo because he only takes goblin-related requests, even though he's a silver rank adventurer. The priestess arrives at the guild and joins the Goblin Slayer. They have been in a party for a month, and the Goblin Slayer has taught her all about goblin killing. Finding a quest to destroy a goblin nest in a mountain castle, the Goblin Slayer takes the priestess with him and they go there. We find out the red-haired girl's parents have been killed by goblins when her village was attacked. Likewise, the Goblin Slayer lived in the same village when he was a boy, and he saw his older sister tortured and killed before his eyes. In the present, the Goblin Slayer prepares flaming arrows and starts shooting them at the goblin settlement in the fortress, setting it on fire and killing the goblins there. Back at the farmer girl's home, her uncle tells her not to get involved with the Goblin Slayer. The girl and the Goblin Slayer were childhood friends, but the uncle thinks he has gone mad after his parents were killed. At the fort, the priestess casts a shield spell, closing off the escape route so the goblins can't escape from their burning nest. When rain starts falling and puts out the fire, the Goblin Slayer enters the fort and kills all the surviving goblins. Visiting the Adventurers Guild, the Elf Ranger, together with a dwarf shaman and a lizardman priest, ask around about the Goblin Slayer. At that moment, the Goblin Slayer enters the room together with the priestess. The elf and her party want to recruit the Goblin Slayer to help them. Since the Demon Lord has been resurrected recently and is gathering an army to take over the world, most powerful warriors are busy fighting the demons. They don't have time for insignificant threats such as goblins. However, goblins have become more active in the Elven lands, and now the Elf Ranger's party needs the Goblin Slayer's help to destroy a goblin nest there. Before anyone can say anything else, the Goblin Slayer exits the room, saying he is going to destroy the nest all by himself. Despite this, the Elf Ranger's party and the priestess join him anyway, and they all depart for the Elven lands. That night, the Goblin Slayer and his party take a rest by the campfire, cheerfully sharing their food with each other. The elf sees that the Goblin Slayer has a magic scroll with him and asks him what's in it, but the Goblin Slayer doesn't want to reveal it. Talking about goblins, they wonder where they come from, but everyone has heard a different theory. Early the next morning, the party finally reaches the goblin nest. The High Elf fires an arrow, killing the goblins standing guard in front of their nest inside a fortress. Entering the fortress, the elf notices a trap and the goblin slayer starts suspecting someone is leading the goblins, as ordinary goblins don't know how to set traps. Inside the fortress, they find an elf woman chained to the wall. The lizardman priest uses his magic to summon a skeletal dragon warrior, who takes the blonde elf back to the forest. After seeing what goblins are capable of, the elf ranger is shocked. Getting her composure back, she gets determined to exterminate the goblins, and everyone moves deeper into the fortress together. When they reach a place overlooking a large hall full of sleeping goblins, the dwarf shaman casts a spell that makes the goblins drunk, while the priestess casts a spell to silence them. Safe from being discovered, the goblin slayer and his party kill all of the goblins mercilessly. The elf ranger realizes how much the goblin slayer has to go through and starts respecting his job. Cleaning themselves up, the party prepares to exit the hall, but a gigantic ogre stands in their way. Enraged, the ogre tells them he was given that goblin army by one of the demon lord's generals. He summons a gigantic fireball, but before he can throw it, the priestess blocks it with her spell. Afterwards, she faints from exhaustion. The lizardman summons another dragon skeleton and a sword made of bone. The elf ranger shoots an arrow into the ogre's eye, while the dwarf attacks him with magic stone projectiles. The lizardman and his summoned creature attack together with the goblin slayer, but the ogre throws the goblin slayer into a pillar, seriously injuring him. The ogre regenerates completely and keeps attacking, unhindered by the others' attacks. While the others keep fighting, the priestess wakes up the goblin slayer and gives him a healing potion and a stamina potion. Drinking the potions, the goblin slayer, now ready to fight again, tells the others he has a plan. The ogre summons another huge fireball and throws it at the goblin slayer, but suddenly a bright light engulfs the room and the ogre is cut into pieces. The goblin slayer used the mysterious scroll, which turns out to be a gate scroll, which he linked to the bottom of the sea. When he activated it, high-pressure water rushed out and cut the ogre apart. Taking his sword back, the goblin slayer finishes the ogre off. While riding a coach back to the town, the elf ranger thinks about the goblin slayer. The adventures she usually goes on are exciting and fun, but this one was horrifying. So she wants to take the goblin slayer on an exciting adventure someday. The next day, the goblin slayer helps the red-haired girl with carrying and selling the farm's goods. After visiting a blacksmith to have his weapons repaired, he meets the priestess of the guild, who tells him she got promoted as an adventurer and thanks him for his help. Seeing him, the blonde receptionist asks the goblin slayer to replace an injured observer for an adventurer promotion exam. The goblin slayer doesn't care since that job doesn't involve goblins, but the receptionist manages to convince him to help her. At the promotion exam, an overly confident elf is interviewed. One of the examiners realizes he has high-quality equipment even though he's a low rank and accuses him of hoarding a treasure chest all for himself. She wants to demote him and ban him from adventuring in this town, but he doesn't agree with her. The elf asks the goblin slayer to stand up for him, but he also agrees he should be demoted for fooling other adventurers. Getting angry, the boy tries attacking one of the examiners, but the goblin slayer punches him. Frustrated, the boy leaves the room. After the interview is over, the blonde receptionist thanks the goblin slayer and he leaves. The two receptionists talk about the Sword Maiden, a great adventurer and God's servant who defeated the demon lord in the past. It also turns out the blonde receptionist is in love with the goblin slayer. Soon the goblin slayer receives a letter from someone who is specifically asking for his help. Finding the elf ranger, her party, and the priestess, he invites them to go on a quest with him. Glad the goblin slayer has warmed up to them, they accept. The party takes a coach and they travel to Watertown, a town in the middle of a lake. Arriving at the Temple of Law, they meet up with God's Archbishop, the person who asked for Goblin Slayer's help. The Archbishop is also known as the Sword Maiden, a blindfolded blonde woman who was among the adventurers who defeated the Demon Lord 10 years ago. The Sword Maiden welcomes the Goblin Slayer's party and tells them that a month ago someone started killing women and kidnapping children in the streets. Nobody knew who the attackers were until one of the town guards saw a goblin at the scene of the crime. The Sword Maiden tried sending other adventurers to kill the goblins, but none of them returned, which is why she asked for the Goblin Slayer. Having gotten a map, the Goblin Slayer's party descends into the sewers. Wandering through the sewers, they kill lots of goblins, but it seems like there is no end to them. Suddenly, they sense something coming and prepare to fight. A boat full of goblin archers drives towards them from a lower part of the sewers, and the priestess raises a magic shield to protect everyone. When the shield's spell wears off, the Goblin Slayer throws a bomb at the goblins in the boat. When the bomb blinds them, the Goblin Slayer boards the boat and starts killing the goblins. Summoning a bone sickle, the lizardman joins the fight too, killing or throwing the goblins off the boat. Finally, the dwarf summons a huge rock and sinks the boat after the goblin slayer and lizardmen jump off it. Because of the noise, a gigantic white swamp dragon emerges from the water and the party starts running away from it. Casting a light spell on the dragon's tail, the priestess lures 3 goblin boats into its way, making the dragon destroy them, while her party escapes. Exiting the sewers, the goblin slayer tells the others that he suspects someone brought the goblins into the sewer and taught them how to use boats. Out of the sewers, the party splits up. Before he returns to the sewer, the goblin slayer buys a canary so he can use it as a detector for poison gas. He decides that this time they are going to avoid the goblins as much as possible so they can find and take out their leader first. Hey, thank you for staying all the way till the end. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. It takes only a second, but it means everything to us. Have a great day and see you in the next video.